Hey, this is Will. So this episode is going to be the ultimate cost of living in Medellin, Colombia guide. I am going to explain every single aspect so you know exactly what you expect, what you budget, all of that kind of stuff. By the way, I have some very useful freebies if you're interested in digital nomad lifestyle, in online marketing, online business, all of that kind of stuff. Then check out all of the links in the description. I'm also going to put some of the things that I might forget or any updates about this topic, and I do have a community for digital nomads, so definitely check that out as well. Also check out my social media, my Instagram, my Twitter, all of that kind of stuff. Now let's get into it. So the first thing is eating out, and this is going to differ quite a bit depending on what exactly you want to eat. So honestly, when it comes to Colombian food and food in Medellin, honestly, I'm not going to lie, I am not the biggest fan. I just don't really find it as interesting and entertaining as some of the other cuisines out there. If I compare it to, let's say, going to Thailand or even food, let's say, in Turkey. For me, it's a little bit disappointing, to be honest. It's not anything horrible or anything like that, but there just aren't as many different choices to choose from. So if you are going to eat local food, they have menu del dia, which is menu of the day, basically what they call it. So this is just sort of a dish that basically everyone eats for their lunch, and that is actually very cheap. So that is going to cost you maybe around $3 to $4, and it's definitely a good dish that's definitely going to fill you up. However, as I said, the problem here is that I don't really see that many different dishes, and that means that you're going to get somewhat bored. So for example, if you look at other countries in, let's say, Southeast Asia, in certain countries, I can eat local food every single day for a month, 2 months. I'm not going to get bored because there's so many different things and so many different flavors. I wouldn't really expect that in Colombia. So a lot of times, for me at least, I would end up eating some kind of Western food, and Western food does increase in price quite a bit. So then I would say expect somewhere basically between, I would say, for a regular lunch, maybe around $7-ish. And if you want to go to some, let's say, very nice restaurants, then those really nice restaurants with really delicious food, I would say they're going to cost you maybe between $10 to $15. So it's nothing crazy for the quality that you get. It's definitely much cheaper than US or Europe. But at the same time, if I compare this to some other digital nomad destinations, like again, Southeast Asia, Balkans, Georgia, Turkey, then it's definitely more expensive. So I would say Medellin is somewhere there in the middle when it comes to eating out. And again, there aren't as many local cheaper options. When it comes to buying groceries, I would say it's somewhat on the lower end. Honestly, no huge difference, but in general, I would say that you can get pretty good quality food for a very affordable price. Next, we got accommodation, and it really depends where exactly you are staying in Medellin. In general, for digital nomads, for expats, foreigners, there are basically only two areas really that I recommend, and that is mostly because safety. So usually you want to be either in Poblado, which is the, I would say, most popular neighborhood among expats, digital nomads, or in Laureles, which is a little bit more sort of local-ish neighborhood. And in Poblado, obviously the prices are going to be more expensive, probably I would say around maybe 10-20% higher price. So in Laureles, if you want to go really budget, you could find an apartment for $400-500, but honestly, it's not going to be anything super nice. So for me, in general, when it comes to Medellin, I guess I'm just not a huge fan of their design. All of the apartments there's nothing wrong with them, but there's nothing really special as well. So yes, you can find this apartment for maybe, let's say, around $500. That's the very budget apartment. A little bit nicer apartment, I would say, is going to be maybe around $700. And if you want something really nice, I would say if you're paying $1,000+, that's going to be a really nice apartment that's going to be a lot of times maybe on top of the building with a really nice view, because you do get views of just mountains, because it's sort of, these neighborhoods at least, they're sort of like in a valley within the city, so you can get really nice sort of penthouse with these beautiful views. But in general, when it comes to price and quality ratio, I would say that for me, Medellin it's a little bit on the steeper part if you want something that's going to be really, really nice. So yes, you can find cheaper options, but for something that's really nice, you are going to, I would say, pay somewhat premium as well. Obviously, maybe in US, Europe, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's definitely not as cheap. You're not going to get as nice of accommodation as you would in, let's say, Southeast Asia, again, Balkans, Georgia, Turkey, all of these places. You're not going to get as nice accommodation. You will need to pay a little bit extra to get that nicer accommodation. Next, we got transportation. So honestly, Medellin is a fairly big city in terms of population and the general layout, but in general, I never ended up using much public transportation. So yes, you do have buses, you do have trains, all that kind of stuff. And it is very cheap, it's very affordable. A ticket is going to be less than $1, but taxis are also very, very cheap. So in general, if perhaps you're going somewhere further out on a little trip, little adventure, yes, you might want to take public transportation, but a lot of times you might end up taking a cab, and cabs are very, very cheap. So for example, as I said, if you go from Laureles to Poblado, which is probably the two places where you're usually going to hang out, a taxi is going to cost you only $3 to $4. So again, it's very, very cheap. Next is going out. So when it comes to going out, obviously, if let's say you're going, it depends what you call going out. If you're considering of just basic entertainment, like going to movies, for example, going to play bowling or something, then all of those things in general, I would say they are definitely on the lower end. Like a ticket to a movie theater is maybe $3 to $4. If you're talking about going out to party and all of those kind of things, I would say it depends quite a bit. There's quite a few different places, and especially if you go to Poblado, you can find some places that are quite a bit more expensive. But in general, I would say it's nothing crazy or anything like that. So, and in terms of drinks, they're not very expensive as well. So definitely much cheaper. If I compare it to US or if I compare it to Europe, it's definitely a lot cheaper. But honestly, if I compare it to something like Southeast Asia, then I would say Medellin Colombia is definitely a little bit more expensive. But in general, all the places, they are a lot of fun and they're very cool and so on and so forth. So what you are paying, it might be, let's say, a little bit more expensive compared to Southeast Asia, but the value that you get, I would say, is definitely very good. Next, we got co-working spaces. So there are a few different options within the city, and in Poblado you have Selena, which is, if you know it, it's basically a chain of the different co-working spaces around the world. And that co-working space, honestly, it's crazy how cheap and affordable it is in terms of how big it is, how new it is, how nice it is. It's only around $100 per month. So I would say definitely co-working spaces compared to other places around the world, definitely on the cheaper end, and you do get good quality for what you are paying. Now, when it comes to general goods, I would say that I didn't notice anything that's crazy, that's very cheap or very expensive, just in general, in terms of clothes, appliances, all of that kind of stuff. I did notice quite a few, I would say, home appliances. They are priced, I would say, pretty well, the same maybe as they are in US or other countries. But when it comes to cameras and laptops, those things can be more expensive. So if you want to buy something that's of a higher value electronics for yourself, I would say try to do it somewhere else. But the basic sort of home appliances, clothes, all of that kind of stuff, unless it's something that's imported, the imported goods are quite a bit more expensive, but it's nothing as crazy as, for example, it might be in, let's say, Southeast Asia. Sometimes they're 5 times more expensive. In Medellin, Colombia, it's not as bad. It is more expensive, but the general local things, I would say, neither very cheap nor super expensive. Next, we got medical things, because you can never know what's going to happen. Obviously, have an insurance. I will leave a link of the insurance that I use. But in general, honestly, if you don't have insurance and you just need some medical stuff done, I think Colombia, Medellin is very, very affordable. If you compare it to, again, other digital nomad destinations, it's definitely on top of my list. I did get some medical stuff, so I did get a wisdom tooth taken out, and I don't remember exact price. I think it was around maybe $70 or something like that, but that was in a super nice dental clinic. And I had some other stuff done as well, and again, I don't remember the price exactly, but I know none of it was really expensive. I definitely paid more in most of the other destinations that I've been to, so it's definitely very cheap. Actually, medical tourism is very popular, especially if you want to get a plastic surgery. Medellin is the place to be, and you will see a lot of, especially girls, do get quite a bit of plastic surgery. So if that's something you're interested in, then definitely a good place. And in general, I would say if you do have any issues or something like that, it's not going to break your bank, but do get insurance just in case. So now a few extra things that you might need. So first of all, you will obviously need a phone. So a phone is going to be around $15-20 per month, depending on your plan and your career and all of that kind of stuff. But that's going to be maybe 10 to 15 gigabytes of data that you get. Gyms, again, don't really cost that much. I would say most of the gyms are somewhere around $20 to $30 per month. If you want to get a cleaning lady that basically comes, cleans the apartment for maybe 3-4 hours, maybe even cooks, that's going to be somewhere around $10 to $15. So that's, again, very, very affordable. So now let's talk overall cost. So I know a lot of times people like to say, hey, can I live in this place for $1,000 per month? When it comes to Medellin, Colombia, I would say that technically you can do that. Technically, as I said, if you find an apartment that's maybe $500, you could technically live for $1,000. But I would say if you really want to be comfortable, I would say maybe budget more around $1,200 per month. And if you really want to be comfortable, if you want to have that nicer apartment and you want to eat out a bit more, because I think that's where most of the expenses are going to add up. Other things, as I said, they are fairly cheap. I would say then budget maybe around $1,500 per month, and then obviously from there, sky's the limit. You can go as far as you want. Again, in general terms, I always like to compare a destination to all of the other destinations for digital nomads around the world. Again, if you compare it to Southeast Asia, and if you compare it to, let's say, Balkans, we compare it to Georgia, we compare it to Turkey, I would say that Medellin is a little bit more expensive. It's interesting because I do see a lot of resources that say that Medellin is basically the same price as all of these countries, like let's say Thailand, let's say Bali, and all of these places. But honestly, that's not my experience. And I guess it depends what kind of life you live and all of that. But for me, I would say, yes, you can spend the same amount of money as you would spend in these other destinations, but you're not going to get as much for your dollar that you're spending. The price and the quality ratio is not going to be as good. I would say it's definitely a little bit more expensive, but definitely much cheaper than North America or Europe. So I hope you find this useful. If you're listening to this as a podcast and you have any questions, take the title, put it on YouTube, find the video, leave your questions in the comments, or if you have any other things that you think other people might find useful, leave that as well. As I said, make sure to check out some of the freebies that I have for digital nomads, online business, digital marketing, all of that kind of good stuff. And again, I will leave everything. I will leave all of the links for what I mentioned. I'll have an article on my website where I update all of this information. So make sure to check that out as well. Make sure to check out my social media, my Instagram, my Twitter, all of those things. If you found this useful, smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, put on those notifications. Stay awesome, and I'll see you soon.